Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling the meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order. I think it's just 6:30. And the roll call, Rick McQuaid.
Here.
Michael Witherspoon. I understand he's not feeling well and will not be joining us. Benita.
Here.
Raleigh Watson. Benita.
Here.
I can see her present. Okay, she's silent, but she's present.
Yeah,
Carl Dickens. Carl is also online. Angela Wasuna had emailed me. She's outside of Dubai right now, and her internet is too weak to be able to stay with us for the meeting. And Tyler Fairburn. Okay, so we do have a quorum, and we're going to commence the meeting. We have two sets of minutes to review, accept, whatever. Let's do the January 18th meeting. Does any member of the, first of all, let's get a motion to have them on the table for discussion. Okay. Second. Tyler, thank you. Any corrections from any member of the commission? While you're looking, I do have one. It's on the second page at near the bottom, second to the last paragraph. There's a reference to court counsel, and that should be corporation counsel, the office for approval. That's important for that to get corrected. Any other corrections? I see no hands up and no other comments, so therefore I'll call it the motion. All those in favor? Everybody, let's see some hands or something out there so I know. Okay, thank you. No one is opposed, so those minutes are approved. Then back to the December minutes. I had mentioned at our last meeting that there were multiple really typing errors or grammar errors. They were really very not well done. And I went through them to try to come up with an easy way to make the corrections. And I don't think it's worth the commission's time taking up time correcting those kind of errors. But I think it's important that it is noted that those minutes were not done very well. So a motion to accept them with that comment.
So
Okay, Mr. Tyler Fairborn moves second. Okay, and Rick McQuaid and also Benita seconds it. Any other comments from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none and seeing none. All those in favor?
aye.
All right, can I see a hands out there? Okay, all right, it passed unanimously. Thank you. So our council is with us. Steve, we've talked since our last meeting, and we're trying to think of a way that we can get deeper into the substance that we need to discuss in order to move this process forward and not to spend so much time with, wordsmithing or whatever. So tonight we're going to take a little different approach. And I had emailed you that we would have some topics that are within the first group of articles. Let's say that's one. Steve, you want to jump in on that? So I got the right articles. Trying to find the page. 3, 6, 9, and 11.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, we can't hear them, so I just want to make sure that.
Yeah.
You can't, yeah, you're silent, Steve.
I'm not on mute.
I hear it faintly. It's just not-
No, very- We can hear
Hello?
Steve, yeah, and he's not mute.
I'm not on mute.
No.
Difference between the two handouts. One says red line, but.
I don't know.
I don't see any.
Yeah. So we're currently having technical problems. We can't hear our counsel, Steve Mednick. We're
I
working
don't think
on
we can
that.
hear anybody. I couldn't hear Benita earlier.
No, couldn't
Okay,
hear Benita.
okay.
It's the general,
You hear me now? Does
I
anybody hear
thought she
me now?
was, yeah.
Can they hear us? Stephen, can you hear
Can
us?
can you hear us, Steve?
I hear everything perfectly.
Yeah,
They can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Faintly,
yeah,
faintly,
it's
Benita.
coming through something over there, right? The
Yeah,
headphones.
no, it's definitely coming through something.
Do you want me to drop off and go back on? Start all over again? Can't hear me.
Mr. Mender, could you try talking for a second?
Talking to me?
Could you, say something again?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Getting a little
yeah.
better.
Oh, it's very faint.
Do you want me to call in again or dial in again?
I had to, Steve. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know.
Let me try
I
to do
can't
it.
hear you either, Carl, just
Yeah, Carl.
faintly.
I hear Carl.
I can hear Carl.
I hear Carl.
Well, we can't.
Get it.
There we go.
I think something happened here.
Hear me now?
Steve?
Am I there?
I hear you fine.
I hear you fine too. So the problem is clearly in the room.
Yeah, because there's that echo, echo. I can open the mic.
I'm
Hear
gonna
some
stay,
space.
I'm gonna stay on since the issue isn't at this end.
It's like feedback.
Yeah, lots of feedback.
In fact, Rick, that's probably more feedback I've heard in that room than I've ever heard in that.
I doubt it.
Mr. Dickens, could you speak a little bit?
Carl, say
Yes.
something.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
So now.
There's a very bad echo now.
Yeah.
Is it me?
It's us here.
You really didn't know you were being auditioned for a Stephen King movie tonight.
Really, it sounds like that.
Use your voice a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you watch?
Hello.
Did you watch our Stephen King movie at the mansion? At the mansion? Did you watch the Stephen King movie done at the mansion?
Yes.
Mansion was fabulous, didn't
Crazy.
I don't know how about the system there, but when I signed on here, it updated, Zoom updated everything. So Zoom's going through some sort of update. So I don't know if it updated there in Chambers or not.
Anything changed? Can anybody hear me besides Carl and Benita?
I can hear you.
Yeah, no, I asked, yeah, I know Benita, that you can.
Benita's loud and clear.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the tropical breeze behind me that's causing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where are you?
Cannot hear Patsy now. Her lips are moving, but I can't hear what you're saying. I don't hear Rick anymore either. Oh, Rick's muted. Now he's muted.
See if you mute, if you unmute it, we're gonna go there.
No, you're supposed to stay muted actually, so the feedback comes back.
Is Timothy O'Leary speaking tonight?
Or maybe we've already seen him. I did notice a little purple haze in that room, so I'm not sure.
Wow, Purple Haze. It's funny, I was just talking about Jimi Hendrix the other day. His
Ah.
name came up. We were talking about guitarists. And I said to somebody, the two best guitarists I've ever heard were Jimi Hendrix and Prince.
Prince, definitely.
I go along with that. I'd add Stevie Ray Vaughan in there also.
He's pretty damn, yep, he's up there.
Mr. Mendick, can you hear me speak?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Dickens, can you hear me speak?
I certainly can.
Okay, I fixed the issue. We're
All right,
good.
so we'll stop talking about Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray
Anita, are
Vaughan.
you okay? Can you hear us?
I can hear everybody.
Okay, so
Fantastic.
let's start talking about term limits. And if you can just give us a
Term
brief
limits.
a rundown of where we are, Steve, or
Yep.
how you want
Not-
to deal with it.
Not term
Term,
limits.
I'm sorry,
length,
term
yes.
lengths,
Yeah.
not limits.
So the current charter has in section three dash three D, the current terms of office, the mayor and all the other in the council, other city officials have a 2-year term. Board of Ed has a 4-year term. The registrars appear to have a 2-year term as well. And so the question becomes, what is the pleasure of the body?
And the town clerk also, right, is,
The town, I said town officials, so.
Oh,
I didn't-
I'm sorry,
yeah,
okay.
The town clerk.
mhm.
And so the real question is, where do you want to go? I can tell you that if you look at the larger cities in the state, Bridgeport has a 4-year term. New Haven has a 2-year term, but I met with the commission the other night, which I'm representing, and I believe they're moving in the direction of a 4-year term. Stamford has 4-year terms. Hartford has 4-year terms. Waterbury has 4-year terms. Norwalk is the next city, and you have a 2-year term, and Danbury as well, 2-year term, then New Britain as well. Going down a little further, Hamden has 2-year terms for their council, and will, as of 2025, have 4-year term for mayor. Bristol, I think, is a 2-year term. So those are the major cities have that breakdown. So one of the things and I'll give you background, then it's for you to talk. There's really
Okay.
nothing more for me to say. One of the things I often recommend to communities is if you're going to a 4-year term for mayor, members of the public who are opposed to that concept will say, how do you hold somebody accountable when you put them in there for 4 years? You don't get an opportunity to vote again for a very long period of time from their perspective. And so one of the things I've recommended is that you keep the council at a 2-year term so that the council has a by-election, and in the by-election, the council becomes the check on the mayor. It gives the council more independence. If you don't have a mayor that is pulling the council in with him or her, it certainly allows for maybe some more diversity, not only of individuals, but maybe of parties. My experience in New Haven is that when there was a by-election, when there was an off election that wasn't tied to the mayoral cycle, special election usually, and that was one of the rare times that Democrats could not win a seat in a 30-member Democratic body, that Republicans could actually win, or Green Party members could win in that scenario. If the council, who is the appointing authority and going to be making the final judgment, wants to have the same term as the mayor, the other way to have the same result that I was talking about, giving the council the off-cycle impact on the mayor's, on the last 2 years of the mayor's term, is to create a stagger so that either the council or the mayor would get a 4-year term and the other would get a 2-year term. And the 2-year term would end, and the final, the next election would be a 4-year term. So that you create a cycle where every 2 years there would be an election in town. So when the mayor's on the ticket, probably the citywide officials, the town clerk, would be in one cycle. We'd have to look and see how the Board of Education falls into that. I'm just talking about the mayor and the council right now. And the council would be in its own cycle. And there'd probably be Board of Education members in that cycle as well. So that's an alternative if everybody wants a 4-year term, to kind of meet the same public policy objective of having a check on the 4-year mayor with the election of council members, and a number of your council members are district based. Then you can go in the direction I suggested. So I will defer now to the members.
Okay. Anybody want to comment? Carl?
I started off with a question, Rick. If we had elections, if we had elections every 4, do we save money?
No.
No.
Rick,
No?
The city.
Rick, leave it muted on his Zoom.
So we save no money by having a 4-year here and 2 years. And there's still going to be elections every 2 years, right? Basically.
Am I correct that the Board of Ed is staggered so that there always would be a Board of Education election anyhow in the cycle? That's, I think, what Carl's trying to ask.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's.
So
true.
that's the reason for it, Carl. That's the reason you would have the election. At least you'd have it for an entire city council at that point.
Well, what if you, yeah, and just to play like, a little better into this, you have 10 councilmen that are
District.
from districts, and then you have the 5 at large. If you ran the 5 at large, it's the same as you did the Board of Ed. So you'd have.
Oh, you mean break up the council?
Right.
You can
Right.
do that. I've had people talk about doing that, but and you don't have minority party representation in Norwalk because you have a district system, even though you have the at-large component. I don't know if you broke off the at-large component, how that would be viewed, but you can split it. I've been in towns where they've talked about splitting it. They ultimately didn't because they felt that it would undo the cohesion of a legislative body, that a legislative body should, to the extent they can, unless you're the United States Senate, come in together and leave together, at the end of a term. But you couldn't split it. There's no legal.
I'm just throwing it out there as a thought, only for the process that, we have had it happen over past years where all 15 or, majority of the 15 have all changed, or we've had first-time council people. And, with a 2-year term, it takes a while to get caught up where you don't even want to say a word on the floor until the first year's up. And then, by the time your first year's up, then you're starting the campaign for your next campaign. And so, the 4-year term actually makes sense. I know it's going to be tough, having been in the last charter revision where 4-year terms really took a big loss. I mean, and they weren't ready, and voters weren't ready to change it to a 4-year term.
For
So
which?
Well, the last one was for town clerk and mayor,
Okay. Just-
2016.
Yes,
I
yeah.
could be wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking to keep it, the flow going along that way.
One of
Rick,
the.
do you think that because of that, the reason there's so many problems are people are opposed to us because we're pretty much basically a one-party town, and people feel, well, if we have one for 4 instead of a chance every 2 years getting somebody in, you wouldn't have a chance to get another party in for 4 years.
That could be the thought of some of the residents, absolutely. I think they also, the big one is like Steve said, what do you do if you don't like who's in there? and you have to have them there for 4 years. There's procedures that, you know, but by the time the whole process is done, the 4 years is up anyway.
Right, so we don't have any immediate or like we do a recall for somebody, or there's
No.
not a vote of council that could remove or
No.
anything like that. How would we remove?
Oh, they're ethics, they're ethics, but,
That's the only way?
Pretty much, yes.
but from
Can I
a
just ask,
sure. Go
what
ahead,
would be the
Anita.
positive for having somebody in there for 4 years? We're talking about the negatives, but what would be the positive?
Good question.
Are there any?
Go ahead, Steve.
I'll defer to Carl, Tyler. I'm sure Tyler has a better answer than I do.
Well, I have, you know, some perspective as somebody who's been the, you know, municipal department head for the last 10 years. And I, you know, I think part of it is, you know, it does, when there's a new administration, it takes them a couple months, if not close to a year, to get their feet under them. I think it's also an issue with hiring. You're probably more likely to get qualified department heads to come in knowing that they'll be there for at least 4 years versus 2 years. Especially when you have, you know, I worked in Bridgeport, you know, years ago, which is, despite being, you know, like Norwalk, largely Democrats, you know, in City Hall, it's just terribly political. So when you have, you have turnover, when you have a new mayor, they kind of clean house and you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. You lose some very qualified people. And to have to go through that every 2 years is tougher than having to do it every 4. You know, that said, I think we got to be very careful if part of the reason the last go around didn't work out was because people were averse to 4 years. You know, it'd be tough to see all the work we've done go down over.
Well, it would be it could be a separate issue, not tied
Yeah.
directly to the charter. So,
Well, no,
in
it
other
would be a
words, the
separate
general
question.
charter,
Yeah.
pull it out,
Question
yeah,
on the back.
yeah,
Separate
a
question.
question, yeah.
But as Tyler knows from his Bridgeport experience, we had 3 or 4 questions, one very controversial question and 2 very innocuous questions on their charter 3 years ago, and they all lost because of the controversial
Because of
question.
the controversial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's interesting here, it didn't go that way. There were 4 questions. The one where the mayor and the town clerk 4-year terms got completely taken down. So I know, and the other thing is too, do you split that up? Do you split it where, you know, does the mayor get 4-year term? And another question, does the town clerk get a term? Another question, does the council get a 4-year term? I know it sounds, you know, crazy to have that many questions on the ballot, but I think in last time, you know, with all the questions that we had, it did get jumbled up for where people were going and not going.
Mhm. I served 6 years on the council quite a while ago. The last 2 terms as a, not from the district, but citywide. And the concept that it takes you at least a year to get your feet wet is very, very on target. It's a lot to absorb. There are some other issues that I think are unique sort of to Norwalk or puzzling in that the Board of Education is elected. The Board of Estimate and Taxation is not, but they're both 4-year terms, one being elected, one being appointed. So the Board of Ed's budget obviously is well over 50–60% of the city's budget. And the Board of Estimate controls to a large extent and directs our budget. So there's a lot of influence there on people that are in place for 4 years. And I think that's part of all of the working structure of the city that we have to look at from that point of view. There's another issue with every 2 years for the council is that if it's with a cycle with the state elections, people in Norwalk vote in different locations. So if you had every 2 years, then some people would be voting in 2 different locations during the same cycle. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because of our districts versus, the statewide elections that we run into our surrounding towns as part of those elections. So that's part of our discussion here. So we need to understand that piece and how it all fits together. But I found thinking about the money part of it here and the power and the expense of the Board of Education and the Board of Estimate working on 4 years and with the mayor for 2 years. They doesn't get to appoint some of those people. So it's very complicated.
Why isn't the BET elected?
I have no idea, but it's never has been since I've been involved. It's not.
Is that something that this board, as we do this, could put that the BET is not an appointed job, but it is an elected job?
We have the authority to do it if we're in agreement to do that. That's, could be part of the discussion too. But they're appointed by the mayor with approval from the council.
Steve, what's your view on that one? I know you've had towns that do.
Well, most of the larger cities do not have these mechanisms. Stamford and Norwalk do. Norwalk's Board of Finance, which plays a similar role to the BET, is elected. It's not elected here. In the smaller towns where you have boards of finance, for the most part, they are elected. They're an elected body along with the Board of Selectmen. You usually have either, in a few towns, RTMs, representative town meetings, or you have the town meeting. And so the elected officials are more limited. But where you have representative democracy, where you have a city council and a mayor, the normal structure is to have just that structure, a mayor being held accountable by the legislative body and vice versa, a mayor with veto authority. In Stamford, the mayor has no veto over the budget because they have this this system that seems to work for them, but it's very unusual and different than other cities. So I don't have an opinion. When I was an alder, I fought the Board of Finance. We had a very similar situation where the Board of Finance was appointed by the mayor, and back in the 80s was not even approved by the Board of Alders. And so the Board of Alders had a limited authority, and we fought it, and because we believed that the legislative body should ultimately be the fiscal authority, and we technically were, but we had this body that was appointed by the mayor, acting like they're an independent group, but they were really the mayor's group, and we got rid of it in our charter revision in the early 1990s. So New Haven's Board of Finance went away in the 1990s. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying,
No, I know.
Yeah.
yeah, that most communities, larger communities, do not have them as a third cog or basically a third wheel in the operation of government.
And I was going to ask Rick, my comment about having to go to 2 different places to vote in a state, the
Your
non-mayor.
municipal elections wouldn't run at the same
Well,
time.
if you have council people running every 2 years,
It'll still
and the
be,
mayor is 4 years.
Of an election every 2 years.
it'll still be a municipal,
It's in the municipal cycle.
yeah, it's a municipal cycle.
The way we'd set it up, Patsy, is we
Yeah, but-
would, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah,
You're
The way
right.
we'd set it up is we'd work off the municipal cycle. The odd numbered elections are municipal, the even numbers are state. They would not coexist. They would not occur at the same time. If we were to set up a stagger so that you had a municipal election every 2 years, in the first cycle, either the mayor or the council would get a 2-year term, or the mayor or the council would get a 4-year term, and then it would even out. But they
Okay.
would never run unless there was a special election for a vacancy of some sort. They would never run in a year where the legislature is running.
All right, okay.
And that's only also because the districts are different. By far,
Yes.
by far.
Any other comments, Benita?
Mm-mm.
No.
I would say one other thing to consider for a 2-year versus 4-year mayor term would be that I feel like if you were to go to 4 years, it would at least have the chance, I think, to increase the likelihood that you get a minority candidate, that you get a non-dominant party, or you get a third party or something like that. In the same way that it's historically, but for a few exceptions, when you have the midterm elections of Congress, right, it's kind of a referendum.
Right.
Almost always goes to the other party. I think if you wanted to see some kind of increased other party representation, it would likely be good for that, in that you would have the mayor in there for 4 years and you keep the council at a 2-year
2 years.
cycle. So if people are unhappy with the mayor, you would, have a greater chance of turnover there.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I think.
Mhm.
Versus you have a popular mayor who's running on the same ticket as the council people, and
Yeah,
people just go
right,
down
right,
the line.
right. And that's pretty much where we're at.
I personally lean to the concept of a 4-year term for the mayor, knowing and having been in the construction field and knowing how long it takes to get a project done and conceived and drawn up and moving forward and those kind of ideas, it's really almost impossible to get anything start to finish in 2 years. Major decisions as far as, building projects within the community. So there's, to me, a lot of value in having a 4-year term for the mayor. And I also feel that if the Board of Education has 4 years and the Board of Estimate are in place for 4 years, that the mayor should have equal strength in the governance process.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment?
I agree with that too, Patsy.
Okay,
I think that
it's interesting. Yeah.
Can I suggest
Sure,
something? And
sure.
you may want to think about this. As Rick pointed out, or somebody pointed out, this is one of the major reasons the last charter revision
Right.
failed. Does
Mm.
it make sense in either the next meeting or the meeting thereafter, if there's a sense of this body that you want to move in this direction, and I have no vote on that. But if you want to move in that direction, would it make sense to ask members of the public to come and talk to the commission now? Not tonight, but
Mm,
obviously.
yeah.
No, I agree
now,
with you.
So, yeah.
and
Absolutely.
engage what people are saying. And I would try to find the people, Rick, you may know them better, try to find those people who've been opponents of the 4-year term and try to gauge what the sentiment is, because and this is where I'm going to be protective, and I don't speak against anything. Personally, I'm for a 4-year term. I was when I was a kid on the Board of Aldermen and in New Haven. But the real key that we're trying to achieve here is a clean new charter. And so if you believe in the 4-year term, you should do it. So, but I think we should try to gauge or socialize it and gauge public response. That's my only
I think that's a
recommendation.
great idea because, if we realize it's going to be a fail before we even get it out there on the floor, or we get it to charter revision approval and then to the ballot, it'll be a waste of time of a lot of people involved in it. I mean, it does take a lot to.
And it's not a big drafting issue for me. 2 years, 4 years, not a big deal. We'll have to do
Yeah.
a
But
stagger.
it would be good. I
Yes.
know there's probably 4,034 people that we can ask from 2016 their opinion, but I think we'll get a smaller group than that together.
But I think obviously having this discussed with the community is vitally important,
Mhm.
but I want to get more meat done within our other aspects and before we have another public hearing, because that just again slows us down. and I'm very anxious about moving forward so that we might then be able to have a couple of issues that we can address, in another month or 6 weeks or whatever, but I wouldn't want to do it at our next meeting for sure.
I wouldn't take it too long.
Not too
because
far.
We don't want to
Yeah.
get bogged down.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than
Yeah.
later.
We don't want to get bogged down on response and everything from the public too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this particular aspect of our charter? Are we ready to move on to say, the vacancy process?
Do you want to take a vote? I guess you have a sense of the body now, but do you want to?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
we don't
officials.
have two of our members present, so I think I'd like to wait until we have an opportunity for them to be part of the discussion.
Would it be valuable to talk to the council too about this
Yeah,
or not?
yes, of course.
Anyone in
And-
everyone.
and- yeah,
They would be
and-
part of the
it-
public because they would be voting
Yeah.
also.
Yeah,
They're part of, I wouldn't separate them from the public input of it
I agree.
because it is about their.
Them.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah.
Steve?
I'd be happy if you think it would be useful for the next meeting, if you want. One of the things we haven't done in this charter process is something I do quite a bit. It's the way I met Tom Livingston, frankly, because he spoke on one of my panels, is I put panels together to discuss these types of issues. I think you have a sense of the issues on the 2-year versus 4-year term, but if you wanted to, I could put a small panel together that might be useful, but if you feel like you understand the issues, I won't do it. I just wanted to offer it based
Mhm.
on past experience.
How do the members feel about that?
So yeah, I'm a big, I like the panel aspects of doing things. I mean, we've done it before with
Mhm.
early voting.
Who would be included in the panel, Steve?
Well, what I usually do, Carl, is I will go to Hartford where they've had a 4-year term, talk about how they made their transition. They have a concurrent 4-year term. Hamden is a smaller town. They just went through the exercise, 10 years ago, they rejected the 4-year term. This time they created the 4-year term for mayor and a 2-year term for the council. So somebody from that experience can talk about how they structured that. Waterbury moved in the direction of the 4-year term. They also at the same time went into move from an at-large system into a district-based board of aldermen. So I'd have to take, I can't tell you, a lot will depend on availability of personnel, but the objective would be to get people from different towns with different experiences.
Mhm.
And Hamden, like you, is a hybrid council. They have an at-large component and they have a district component. The only difference is they do apply minority party representation to their at-large district, even though legally they do not have to, as you've chosen in Norwalk. So they're kind of useful in that regard. So it'd be people like that. It would be practitioners, probably members of the council, could be a mayor or two, depending on.
And
who it
when
is.
would you want advise that we do that?
I would try to do it in 2 weeks. We're trying to move this issue quickly. So I would try to put a small panel together. Again, I'm not sure you need it. I just wanted to offer it because it's something I have done in the past. You seem to have a pretty good, the 4 of you or 5 of you, I'm sorry, the 5 of you, I'm looking around the screen, have a pretty good handle on this issue. But I would try to put a panel together for our meeting, not for the whole meeting. I don't think.
Well,
you need to
that's
do it.
my next question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because there's so
that's-
much else we
yeah,
need to do.
Yeah, so, I wanted to offer it. I'm not
Mhm.
sure you need it. I just wanted to offer it. That's all.
and that panel would be for this group you're talking about, for us to ask questions of?
For the Charter Commission,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I tend to think we don't need that. Because as I look at the blocks on the wall here, there seems to be a consensus that there's a good, strong feeling for a 4-year term.
Just wanted to offer it. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, just from my point of view.
Well,
would
there
rather-
there is one benefit to it beyond that, as we do bring this issue to the public in Norwalk, that we can articulate the fact that we've talked to other communities that have done X, Y, and Z and demonstrate the thoroughness of our research in making a decision. That's the positive.
That is a positive. Do you think that would make a difference to people?
I
in
have
Norwalk, though?
no idea.
I know what my gut feeling is.
I have
but,
no idea.
I think you could be onto something with that, Carl, but I think it not adds legitimacy, but I think it, you know, if that is the direction that you go, it strengthens the argument that you've spoken with other municipalities who've gone through this, especially Hamden, which sounds really,
Yeah.
really
Right.
quite similar
Yeah.
to us, which is that they rejected it
Mhm.
10 years ago and are now maybe.
Yeah.
Direction, so.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think it could be instructive, especially if we just do it on Zoom
Mhm.
and it's, you know, we have the whoever the panel is,
Mhm.
dials in on Zoom, it could be 15 minutes, it could be 20 minutes and then.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it makes it like we didn't just make the decision in a vacuum.
Yeah,
My,
and I'd make the point of
Right.
inviting the local press to be there to cover this.
well,
Yeah.
you just took that out of my head, only from the standpoint that I think the biggest thing that we have to do is make it clear amongst the electorate, and I think we'd have to, Rick, I think we'd have to coordinate this with the party leaders on both sides in the city
Absolutely.
to get to their membership, to explain to them that this is not a term thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
the length of
Right.
term.
Right, right,
And
because you know, right off the bat, when you bring it out as a 4-year term for the mayor, there's going to be one side that says no and one side that says yes.
absolutely,
But we need to present it in a layman's term,
Mhm.
or, as you said, for the length of term, not the term. And
right.
I'd also like to find out, you know, the way that the one, was it Hamden that went from
Yeah.
no to yes?
Yeah.
What
Mhm.
caused them to go to yes after, say, you know, their folks said no?
Mhm.
I think that would be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
There would be. I happen to know because I was their attorney, but it's times changed is what happened. But
Absolutely.
but I think it would be useful to have, what I might do, because I've been through both, is I could bring somebody who was on our charter commission 10 years ago, when we didn't advance it. And now where it was advanced, to have the difference of mentality as to why it occurred now and didn't occur 4 years ago. I would also give you a small panel. I think 3 people
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
more than enough. I usually do 5 or 6.
Yeah.
They get 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes each. They'll be happy to zoom in. They don't have to leave their kitchens. They can just, have dinner on the, warming in the background, and they can come in, and then they're done. So
So I think there's a consensus to do
All right,
that.
I'll
but
do that.
We want to formalize that with a motion.
And Steve, that would be like a smaller town than us, the same size as us, maybe one a little bigger.
I would, my intent would be, right now, would be Hamden because of their similarity of structure with the hybrid. They are smaller. They're the 11th largest city in the state, so they are smaller than you. Not hugely smaller, but smaller. I would think about Hartford or Waterbury, and Hartford or Waterbury. I'm trying to think who else I
And
might bring in.
Danbury is 2 years, right?
Danbury's 2 years.
Wouldn't like, say something like New Britain or a Valley, town or city.
I'd be happy to talk to New Britain. I've done New Britain work.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
something
New
middle.
Britain, all right, so let me put them down. I'll talk to Danny Salerno there. He actually appeared on a panel of mine. Hartford is an at-large system, so I don't know about Hartford, but I will talk about Hamden. All right, I'll put a panel together. I'll talk to Patsy before I do the invites. Let me give it some thought overnight and tomorrow
Okay.
and
so
Thursday and Friday. And
Shall we
I'll let you know.
formalize this then? Does somebody want to make?
I-
Do we need to make a motion or something?
I think we just need to put it on our agenda for next.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the motion is to
We'll
do
need
that.
a
first.
I'm duly instructed. I got it.
Okay, fine. All
Can I
right.
just, before we move on,
Sure.
because you did bring up the issue of removal, and I was looking to the section, and there is removal proceeding for the mayor. It's in section in the common council section, which you haven't gotten yet, which is 4-3A5, and the mayor can be removed at a council meeting with notice for official misconduct or neglect of duty. He has a right to be heard. The notice has to be clear. The council has to act by a 2/3 vote of the members, of all the members of the council. And that is all derived from special act. If you ask me, do I believe a court would uphold this position? I would tell you, I would hedge my bets, because even though it's a special act, it's close to the concept of recall. The difference is, the Supreme Court, when they knocked down recall, allowed the 5 cities, the 5 towns and cities that had recall to keep recall. So there are 5 communities that have it because they were in their special acts. So it's possible that a court would uphold this. There was a case in Hartford involving a registrar that's really a poorly written case that did not allow for the removal of the registrar. And I just don't think the grounds were strong. It didn't go up, so thank God it doesn't have like an appellate ruling at this point. This could be effective. It could have legal effects since it's a special act. I just wanted to let you know
Right,
that it
that's
exists.
great. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the vacancy issue, or filling vacancies.
So
Go
under
ahead.
3-6A of the charter, of the reorganized charter, vacancies for elective offices, we're not talking about boards and commissions, we're talking about elective office only at this moment, occurs if somebody dies, resigns, removes his or her residence from the city, becomes incapacitated to discharge the duties of office by reason of permanent mental or physical disability or infirmity, convicted of malfeasance in office or any, as the charter says, infamous crime, or when a vacancy shall occur for any other cause. So if it's determined that there is a vacancy, then there is in effect a vacancy. It's kind of circuitous, but that's the way it works. Once there is a vacancy, the council is notified, and upon 1 week's notice, they ultimately declare the office vacant. And actually it's the clerk of the city. So I don't know, Rick, is that you or is that the city clerk?
Yeah, that's me.
All right.
You
So
just
it
did
should
it
be the
for-
clerk of the town, is what it should say.
They, I just went through that with one of the council members who became a state representative.
Okay.
We just.
Yeah.
did it
And
a couple
also
weeks ago.
one that moved.
And so then you declare the position vacant. The person who is, and I'll get into how it's filled in a moment. The person who fills the vacancy has all the powers and duties of the office of the incumbent, the former incumbent. It's the election is by a plurality of ballots, not a majority, but a plurality of the ballots of the council who will vote on this. If a vacancy occurs for the office of mayor, the council, by a plurality of ballots, selects one of their members to be the mayor. If it's a seat on the council, again, by plurality of ballots, the electors of the council from the council district or the council people select somebody who is an elector of the council district or district of the city from which the former incumbent was chosen. So if it's an at-large position, it makes no difference. If it's a district, they have to be from the same district. For any other elected office, it just has to be an elector of the city. With the exception of mayor, and this is an interesting provision, the vacancy shall be filled by an elector of the same political party from the as the former incumbent was chosen. That's kind of interesting because that's a little off it's a little different than
Yeah, very
other communities. All other vacancies have to be filled in conformity with the position of the incumbent who has left office. And you have a provision in here that is somewhat unusual. Although it's not completely unusual, and I'll tell you why, because it's in the state statutes for replacement of registrars. You have the city committee or the town committee of the political party fills the vacancy. If vacancy, it shall be filled by the town and city committee of the political party. It kind of contradicts the provision where the council does it. I think it means to say that you need to get their nominee or their recommendation or something. It's very inartfully written. I personally don't like the idea of inserting political parties in the charter. But as I was going through and looking at the filling of the registrar's position, it says that the town committee of the same political party gets to fill the registrar's position. Now, that may be a little different because the registrar,
What if they're crossed endorsed? What happens?
You
then?
wouldn't have a registrar.
they're not cross endorsed.
Oh, never.
And that, maybe a town
A
clerk.
clerk.
you never
Town
did.
clocks are cross endorsed, but not
I
registrars.
meant to
But
top clerk. I meant
we
to top
also
clerk.
did that, Steve,
Uh,
let's see, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we did have a registrar resign,
mhm.
resign, and it was filled by the town committee, Republican town.
Yeah,
committee.
and that's statutory. So, my objection to the notion of having it in the charter is my own personal concern. I think we should, if we leave it, I think it should be, they shall recommend a replacement. The party of the incumbent retired, resigned, a vacant member, they should be recommending it because it sounds like they fill it. That should not be the case. Ultimately, a governmental position should be filled by a governmental agency, not a political party. That's my opinion. It doesn't appear to be the case with the registrar of voters, but I get it because they are partisan
Right.
by nature. At the same time, they're clerical, but they have a partisan role. The last point I want to make.
Before you move off of that concept, that's going to be an interesting discussion in Norwalk, making that kind of a change, because I'm aware that a lot of party people are very focused on that. And that's the perception, and it's been the way it's been done. Well,
Yeah, that one.
for
would be a tough
50,
one.
yeah, that's a tough one. It's not, so we need to recognize that and understand how we make a decision in making any changes or recommendations.
Right.
It's not an easy one to accomplish.
And the last thing I wanted to point out is that there's a provision in 3-6D called vacancies in the Board of Registrars. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that exists. Is it the two registrars?
There
Is there-
is
yeah.
no board of registrar.
All right, so that may be a provision that you may want to delete. That's all I'm saying.
I believe so.
That you may want to repeal, because if it's not.
It's
We do
non-existent.
not want to
Yeah.
create a new board of
Yeah,
registrars.
and
No.
that would be referenced, obviously, that's not, doesn't function.
So let me tell you quickly, I'll run through some of the cities and how they deal with vacancies. In general, very similar processes. There's it's usually the council that fills most of the vacancies. With the exception of mayor. In many communities, the mayor is, if there's a line of succession in communities. For example, in New Haven, the president of the Board of Alders would become the mayor if the mayor were to leave office, either on a temporary basis or a permanent basis, depending on the timing of it, because there's a state statute that kind of governs whether you need to have an election before the next municipal election. There's a timing issue that comes into play there. So there's an automatic succession. Hamden has the same thing. Hartford has the same thing. There's another community, I'm drawing a blank on which one it is, where they actually, so similar to you, they select somebody from the council, they vote for them at that time. My recommendation to you is, if you're going to go with succession, why do you want to have a Donnybrook where a mayor is selected by a plurality of the body? And so I tend to recommend that you have a line of succession where you have a mayor, a president of the body who succeeds the mayor, and then a president pro tem who succeeds the president during the term of office. One of the problems you have is, which I discovered a few months ago, is that the president's not elected for the full term of office. It seems to be a one-year tradition. I think you might have to think about that. We talk to the council and think about that issue, whether or not that is something you want to reconsider in the charter if you want to build a line of succession. Or the fact is, for that year, that person is in the line of succession, and the person who replaces them is in the line of succession the next year. It's just that, yeah.
That process is relatively new, I think, within probably the last 10 years that the president is a one-year term.
No, it was here. No, I was here too.
Well, it wasn't when I was there, so.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Just simple.
Yeah, and I think but I don't think there's anything in the charter that says that. It's just been sort of an agreement within the council.
I think it's council
Yeah,
rules. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you check on that for us, Steve?
Oh, I'll be happy to.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Steve, I'm gonna also throw something out there. I can remember back, oh gosh, probably early 80s, maybe a little before that, that there actually was a succession of mayor, council president, and then there was this other name of something. Because I can remember.
Majority leader?
No, it wasn't a majority leader. I thought it was I have to go back. It was back in the days of.
Which mayor?
Not a president pro tem.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, almost like a president pro tem, but I don't think it was called that, but it was back in, it was definitely in the Esposito administration that there was this mayor, council president, and then this other position. So I can try to.
So if
contact someone.
within the rules of the council or
Yeah,
not,
within-
yeah, so we're gonna have to research that, I guess.
All right, I'll find out what the.
Yeah, I can
rules
look
are one
into it
year.
also, because I can remember
Yeah.
some of the members that were involved.
But that's kind of the way it is. And as Patsy said, if there's ownership, a sense of ownership by the parties on those positions, the thing you have to decide is, do you leave it and make it clear that they're making a recommendation to the council and the council ultimately has to approve? Or do you leave it the way it is? Or do you clarify
Mhm.
and say that it's the party that chooses the replacement council member? It's not clear the way it's written now.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
you have to decide what you want, and then we just have to make sure it's as clear as the noonday sun in the cloudless sky.
Carl wants to respond to that.
Oh, I just want to throw my thoughts out about the replacement of an elected council member who leaves the seat with a term to go and whatever it may be. Because as Rick knows, and probably the rest of you know too, we did experience that recently. And I don't think that the district in which it occurred, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know. But the way I saw it handled, I don't think that it was handled properly.
I don't think it was handled properly, and I was the one supposed to overseeing it.
Yes. So what I would like to see, and I don't know if we can put it into here or change it, the verbiage, just fairly simple, is that if a council seat becomes open in a certain district, no matter which one it is, that all the registered members or people that live, citizens that live in that district, that are the party of the person who resigned or left, are notified that there's a vacancy for that councilmatic seat for such and such party, be it Democrats or Republicans. And then there's an open period of time that they can declare, either through the district chair or come to you, Rick, and register and say they want to run for that position. And only the party of power, only the party that's losing that seat, the registered people are allowed to vote for that because it would be keeping the same elected party in office, but that it would be chosen by other people in the district, citizens, who would at least know there is a vacancy, at least might want to run for that seat, maybe wants to get involved, whereas in I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, that when we had that situation, the registered voters of that district had no idea that there was a council seat vacant.
So you're really sort of advocating an election.
Yes. For only the party that's
Yes,
that
right.
person belongs to, but an election, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you can do that. I mean, the charter on the temporary seat until there is an actual mandate for an election, depends on the timing of the vacancy, but the statutes that come into play, the statutes are not going to permit effectively a primary to fill the seat. You can fill the vacancy under the charter with somebody of the same party. That is absolutely clear. I feel very comfortable with that. I don't think we could put a provision in the charter that would trump Title IX, the election statutes of the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
So that would be problematic. So, so I don't think we can mandate our own election
I
process.
think it's problematic when a district that has either 10 members, 20 members, whatever it is, makes a decision to fill the seat of somebody who was duly elected by the entire district and goes away. It now becomes open.
Oh, go ahead, Carl. I'm
And
sorry.
it's
Well, you have
only
the
filled-
option, then
and it's
Carl,
only
you have the
filled with that
option
district's-
of going right to a special election. Don't fill the vacancy, have an election within a certain period of time. And then, yeah, that's.
would
the-
satisfy that.
I don't think you're gonna get the state to agree to do a special election on a district seat for a one party.
No, not for one party, but,
No.
but you can under state law go to a
Change it.
special election.
Right,
But it would not be for the
Be a
one party.
primary.
Yeah, it would,
Right.
yeah.
But you could have a special election if you had more than one party to be able to run for it.
Anybody who could, the two major parties would have a place on the ballot. And anybody else who could petition their way on would be able to run.
Yeah, well, that would be like a duck flying out of a blind go, be shot on sight because
yeah, there's no doubt about
that
it.
ain't gonna happen.
No, that is not gonna happen, which is very clear.
Yeah, that just is
Okay.
not gonna happen.
No, but if you remember also, Carl, we declared a seat open when there wasn't a seat open, so a lot of things.
That's true
procedures
too.
Followed all the way
Yeah.
down through there and, you know, some people still disagree with how it was run, but that's the way the rules say. And
Yeah.
Here's just a thought on that. Could we require in the charter that when a vacancy exists, that it be advertised in the paper and the websites and on the city website? Can we do something like that? Would that have any value?
Well, my only thing there is I think you
Notice.
could, but then
But I'm saying have the
How-
need
how
for
do you- how do
notice
you-
in the charter.
but how do you, so then how do you pick the person?
Well, it's a start, you know, I'm just,
No, no,
it's something better than nothing, if it's possible.
Well, the notice actually occurs, you could, we're trying to move away from newspaper notice, but it could be website, whatever you want to do, and it could be newspaper notice. But you do have a 1 week notice requirement to declare the vacancy. So the vacancy is publicly declared by the city council. So I suppose that notice could be published somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's declared by, I do that, the town clerk.
Yeah.
And, you know, in this past
It's
one.
not in the charter.
it's not.
Yeah, and in the
No, I think
past one,
we
they never
put
gave
that
Rick a chance to
requirement
even
in the
declare it.
charter. That would be helpful.
Yeah,
I hear you.
I, you know, part of the job is getting the word out on things that
Yeah.
are changing and going, so
Yeah,
it's just
But you-
procedure.
but you were if my memory serves, you were kind of bypassed. I don't think there wasn't even, you never had a chance to even make that public.
No, yeah, but that's why it stopped real quick too, because I said, you can't do it.
Correct. And you made the right decision. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, but what about my idea of requiring notice? Is that a value or not?
I always think required notice is good for anything.
I do too, yeah. Anybody else? Benita, Tyler? Yes, no, maybe?
No,
You don't think it's?
no,
necessary?
nothing else. No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Nothing else.
Okay, okay, so do we want to add that?
That,
I would like to see that, yes.
Yes,
Good. I
okay.
have a note. It's done.
That's
It'll be
fine.
done.
Okay, all
town
right.
clerk.
You are
will-
duly noted, Mr. Attorney.
I've also
Shall,
got it
shall,
too, Carl.
he shall give
You
notice.
shall, yeah.
I shall.
I
am
shall
compelled-
declare.
Slash-
vacancy.
I am compelled to do
must.
so. Yes.
Slash must, okay.
I must do it.
Any, yeah, any other discussion on vacancy? Okay, so you're gonna come up with some,
I'll talk to you about the
Okay.
president, the 1-year term of the president, because you really need to decide whether you want to have an automatic succession. I think that's the
yeah,
real key
yeah,
You're gonna
issue
have
on there.
yeah. right,
Okay, good.
Okay,
Connect.
And is that, the terms on this is where you talk about a councilmatic seat, would that also apply to at-large seat? And would that also apply to a Board of Education seat?
mhm.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, to both.
Anything elected?
Anything
Anything
elected.
elected.
Anyway,
So,
Okay, so trying to clear up the language between the town clerk and the city clerk. We need to make that more readable and clearer.
It's Article 6.
well, that is true. The language I handed out in Article 1 through 3, actually, it's actually Article 6. And I want to thank the distinguished town clerk, Rick McQuaid, for providing me with some background information. I tried to lay out the role of the town clerk as clearly as I could. And the reason I addressed the town clerk office is the city clerk we will not see technically until we get into the mayor's section, because right now the city clerk is a mayoral appointment. And so I think the issue you need to think about is whether or not the positions should be consolidated. In most of the larger cities, you have, New Haven has a city and town clerk. Waterbury has a city clerk and a town clerk, both elected. Bridgeport has a city clerk and a town clerk, both elected. Hartford has a city and town clerk appointed by the legislative body, not an elected position. I'm going from memory right now. Stanford
as just. a
Stanford
town
has
clerk.
2. Or they just have-
No.
they have the
town
combined.
city.
They have a city and town clerk
Yeah,
elected.
combined.
Yeah,
But
so they have a
split up their
combined.
department.
So they have a combined city and town clerk. So the issue is what is the function of the city clerk? And does it make sense to take the ministerial functions that are typically in a town clerk's office and merge those functions so that the town clerk, the elected town clerk, becomes a city and town clerk? The mayor, we'd have to find out, and I do not know the answer to this, how the city clerk is used in the mayor's office. And what functions are analogous functions to the clerk, to Rick's functions as a town clerk. And if you move those over, what does the mayor get in replacement? Does the mayor get another position to do the other functions the city clerk has had? So you might want to, I mean, we have Rick on here, so we know what Rick does, and Rick will tell us what he does. Do we need to have somebody come and testify on what the functions of the city clerk's office is and how they operate? And
I'll testify in their defense.
What's that?
I'll just testify in their defense because the jobs are so different
Different, yeah.
from each other. You know, a lot of people, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Steve, but just as
No, please be my guest.
the site to it is, town clerk in Norwalk, doesn't handle any of the activities of any of the boards or commissions or, and they serve it, the town, city clerk serves the pleasure of the mayor, but that is also the mayor's right-hand person, besides the chief of staff that oversees everything. The, city clerk is the one that, you know, works with the council and the different boards and commissions and the different, complaints and things that come into the city, of fallen trees, about, damaged properties. A lot of all that comes under the city clerk's banner. The town clerk, they get, their direction comes from the Secretary of the State. And, that's land records and licensing of dogs and fish. Marriage, death, birth. We break it into almost three categories that I explained to you, Steve, where we do land recordings, we do elections, and we do vital statistics. Some towns that have the same city clerk and town clerk also have different departments of a separate vitals, a separate land record, and a separate election department. So our jobs are very much not similar at all. They don't come together, only on different smaller things. And so that really is why there's two of them. And, one serves for the Secretary of the State and the mayor, and the other one serves at the pleasure of the mayor.
And also the election part, you haven't mentioned that.
Well, the election part's
Right.
going to change anyway, because we don't know, well, we have some inkling in what direction Secretary of State Thomas is going to go with early voting and everything, and it looks like it's going to come under the town clerk. So if that happens, that's going to open up a whole nother
Right,
step to the town clerks.
right, and more work. Yeah.
Yeah, with staffing and
Yeah.
equipment and
Mhm.
space and everything.
So any comments from any of our commissioners?
Well, I was gonna, run this out to Steve, many times, over the course of the time I've been town clerk, it has come up also, should the town clerk be appointed or should the town clerk be elected? I'm coming down to I don't want to say the end, I have a few good years left in me to be town clerk, hopefully. But it is something they need to look at. If it should be elected or it should be appointed, because it does have the duties of, working with the city and the administration. So what's your take on that, Steve?
I don't have a particular take on that. I mean, I think that the first offices I came into contact with as a young public person when I was director of the State Elections Commission were the registrars and the clerks. And I have nothing but extraordinary respect for both offices because they are pretty selfless, relatively non-political, even if they're elected on a partisan basis. And the registrars are partisan entities.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're the bulwark of our election system. And so I'm not one of these people who believes that there's anything going wrong with the elective officers that hold those positions. We've been lucky in Connecticut.
Very, definitely.
Not lucky. I mean, we've just
We're good at what we do.
yeah, I think we're very good at what we do. Some people have tried to move in the direction of having appointed clerks on the theory that they are, you want to make sure they're nonpartisan. My experience has been, and this is just, this is not empirical, but my experience has been that these are among the finest elected officials in our state, regardless of party, and they just do their job. They may support a candidate for president. Most of them don't get very political, by the way. But they have a right to go out and support the candidate of president, and the Dems may not like the Republican's choice and the Republican may not like the Dems' choice. But I think in most communities, regardless of that kind of partisan background, I think people trust the town clerks and the city clerks who administer and work on the elections process. I think it works pretty well. And the registrar system works pretty well because there's a balance between the two major parties. And there's also room for a non-major party to get a registrar's position under the statutes. It would allow for 3 registrars in some communities if there is a strong non-major party. So it does allow for balance. So that's my take, Rick.
Thank you. And thank you for those comments. also.
Any other commissioner have comments?
I don't have a comment. I just have a
Carl?
I just have a point of clarification and from me, and maybe I should know this, Rick, but so Rick, you're both town and city.
No, I'm just
No.
town,
You're just town clerk.
just town clerk.
Right.
And I don't mean just town clerk, but you're the town clerk. Who's the city clerk?
Irene Dixon.
Okay,
She replaced Donna King.
she replaced Donna King when Donna retired.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so the only thing I hear is that when you talk about them is that, so the town clerk ends up being really the liaison with the state, Secretary of State,
Yes,
and the city clerk is really the liaison with the mayor.
It's
for the
more
most
the-
part, right.
So there could be a time when the mayor has something, depending on what may or may not happen, but the mayor has something he really wants to get to Hartford. But since he doesn't appoint the town clerk's one elected, but the town clerk doesn't agree with the mayor's point of view of pushing some issue up to Hartford, the mayor has no real control over the town clerk per se. Is that right?
I'm trying to.
That kind of need is not
Yeah,
there.
you know,
need is
it-
not
there, it probably happens in some places. Here, I think, where we all are working together, even the different departments and the different political parties. You know, usually it's not one person making that decision anyway, so it's a group that will bring it to Hartford or at least get it expedited. If it was something the mayor wanted to go to Hartford, even if I did not agree with it or fully wanted to go that way, as my job as a town clerk, I would see that at least it got to the Secretary of State's office for a discussion, and they would have a contact between. them.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, it's fortunate here, and I'm lucky, and it humbles me a lot when I do it, is that I have been lucky to be cross-endorsed by both the Republicans and the Democrats. So my working relationship with all the different departments and the mayor and the party heads is a very good one. And so, you know, we all work on a team. We keep the politics out of it
Yeah.
as much as we can. I do have political views, though, Carl.
No, really?
I think, I agree with everything that you just said, Rick, but I think the charter needs to just articulate near each other in the charter. That the town clerk does this, the city clerk does that, because everybody in town, I've had so many people ask me, where do I go for X, Y, and Z? No, city clerk, no, here in Norwalk, you would go to the town clerk. So that articulation of the role needs to be clearer.
I agree.
Well, when you get the next section, I'm going to send you Article 5, you will see that the city clerk's functions are clearly delineated in the charter.
Very much.
They're already there. They need to be cleaned up into nicer language, but the functions are very clear. The way
Yeah,
I broke it down.
I understand that, but my point was they need to be next to each other somehow early on, or a definition in the beginning where we have other definitions of what the town clerk is in Norwalk and what the city clerk is.
Yeah, I
That's
would
my point.
Well, I'm not sure how to do that. One is an elected position, and they will be under elected officials, and the other is an appointed official. And so I don't know how you can turn this into a how-to book. It's a constitution.
Mhm.
And so the positions are pretty clear. What we can do is we can maybe in the definition say the city clerk shall have the responsibilities set forth in section such and such.
Right.
The town clerk shall have the functions set forth in such and such,
Right.
but they're not gonna be next to each other, but maybe the definitions could kick you into them.
Right, so that people know where to
Streamline.
go and for what, basically.
Yeah, streamline.
Got
it.
Yeah.
I want to also point out that the council also appoints a assistant city clerk,
Yes.
who's also amongst us, so Mr. Jordan over here is appointed by the council.
I'm just a, passenger on this ship.
I am not letting you get off the boat.
Yeah.
And he also
it's
does a
just
very good job.
brutally
Yes, very good job.
confusing. And especially so that we call ourselves a city and then people go to automatically think that the city clerk can help them with X, Y, and Z and they can't.
Yeah, and then they're told, no, you gotta see the town clerk, and they come back and say,
No.
no, we're a city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're also the first open door in the building, which doesn't help a whole lot.
Yeah, no, but I agree with that. I think,
I'll do that in the definitions.
yeah. I mean, the sad part is that it's a really, both positions are really, really important and functional to keep the city moving.
Absolutely.
And if you
Exactly.
go on the street and stop 10 people and ask them what the roles are and who they are, I'm wagering we would have jaywalking. They wouldn't know.
No, they don't. And many people do need to know for a specific reason.
Absolutely.
Where do you get the death certificate? Whatever, the dog
Yeah.
license, a complaint to the city. Okay. So, then the other, one of the other major confusions is the wards and the district, description. So. Steve, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So you have three different concepts here. And you have districts, which are council-based districts. And the way I drafted the provision, if I could find it quickly. It's a district that will be created. We probably won't get around to it till 2025 at this point, although most communities are doing it this year. That are based off of the decennial census. And you create, equal districts of relative equal size. One person, one vote in accordance with federal constitutional standards. And the council members are then elected from those districts. You also have something in town, and I have not looked at the comments yet, but one second here. The registrars have given me some comments on these things. So I don't have the answer for you. They just came in late this afternoon. You have something else that's called voting precincts. And basically, now that I'm looking at the language, basically says that each council district shall be entitled to, or this is proposed language by Tom, actually. Each council district shall be entitled to at least one such voting precinct, and each voting precinct shall have a separate voting place. So precincts are basically categories that are created to facilitate the process of voting.
Access.
And they don't have to be one person, one vote. They really are there for the convenience of people. When I was an alder, I had two different parts of the ward. The 2/3 of the ward had one polling place, and 1/3 of the ward, because of gerrymandering, it kind of meandered over the Yale Bowl into the inner city, and I had a second polling place. We were one district, but we had, in your parlance, two precincts, which were polling places. I think that's all a precinct is a separate polling place. And
So if we add that / polling places, whatever, for instance, in District A, in the center of Norwalk, it's on both sides of the river. Half is on one side and half is on the other. So it's very important for access for people to be able to vote easily is to have a precinct on each side, or a polling place rather on each side. And throughout Norwalk, that happens a lot.
So the registrars propose it and the council has to approve it. And so that's how they are established. And the idea, I think the idea is to really provide for to facilitate the elections process is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Now, the wards, and I put the wards, if you may recall, in the draft that I sent out last week in the category of recommended for repeal. It's just not clear to me. And I'll talk to Mario and others, but the people I've talked to in City Hall have no concept of it. I don't know if Rick has a sense of what the wards are. I think they're a relic that goes back to well, as recent as 1969, I will say that. It goes back to 1913.
Yeah.
But as recently as 1969, there were changes made in the sections relating to the 5 wards.
Mhm.
And if you look at the definitions, they go to a point that Patsy has made, and that we're going to try to, I've asked some people to take a look at it and try to define it for me. I think we need something at the beginning of the charter. I agree. Patsy actually thinks we need it. I agree with her completely. We need to have a historical context
Yes.
set at the beginning of the document. It's not a provision of the document, but it would be right at the beginning, not as a footnote, but as a prefatory statement, not a preamble, but a prefatory statement that says we are the product of X, Y, and Z. This town was here, this town was here, this town was here, this district was here, and we all made it a city somehow. And I just don't know enough about it. So I've asked, Patsy is part of the group. I've asked a little group to come together and get me all the ingredients of what that origin story is. And we should have that origin story at the beginning of the document. And I think that'll be helpful. I think the wards must be part of it because the wards talk about an East Norwalk Fire District. It talks about the city of South Norwalk. It talks about the first ward. And then it talks the former city of South Norwalk in the second ward. And then it's very confusing. And I'm not sure that they're used by anybody, but I will look at the comments of the registrar and should be able to help you out on that.
And you went to 69, and I think that's when we went to the council at large, the 5 council at large. I was on the council at that time, and ran at large. So that was when we made that transition.
So that's all I can tell you. I'll
Okay.
take a look at the comments from the city clerk and I will give you kind of an updated markup of the documents.
So are the wards self-governing or not?
I don't think the wards exist, so I don't think,
Wards.
yeah.
Not
I don't
as wards. No, they're not self-governing.
Hmm.
Taxing districts,
Taxing districts.
are.
yeah,
Right.
not the wards. No, the wards are just there for political boundaries. That's really what they are.
And it's unfortunate that it's taxing districts, but that's how they're called. If they were, named Old South Norwalk or whatever, it would be easier. It would be easier, but when you get that taxing word in front of them, it's very confusing. So that's what's got to be explained also, because they gain their power from the state. And they have power to buy and sell and do bonding and own property and run water departments and electric departments and beachfronts.
So
So
they're little cities within a city.
yes. And
They're the remnants, I think, of some of the
mhm,
cities
Except
that
for the
became part
6.
of Norwalk.
except
Yes.
for the 6.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
If you look back into
And that,
some of the old
yeah.
land record books. too.
and that's what's got to be explained.
Right. You
Yeah.
can see where they
Yeah.
divide up.
Where geographically, where's the sixth district?
Row 8.
Oh, wait,
Well, that explains. In my
So-
mind.
The first district is the center of Norwalk and the second district is mostly South Norwalk. And the fire district is East Norwalk, south of I-95.
you could break them up A, B, and C. A is the first, B is the second, C is the third. The fourth,
Oh, then you get into trouble.
yeah, really.
You
the-
can't do it
Really,
that
the
way.
fourth district is what screws it all up. And then sixth district is mostly District B.
So where's the fourth district?
Oh, it
It's,
gerrymanders through the town. I mean,
Oh, it goes throughout the town. So it
Yeah, it has
crosses
a
different
couple.
other
it has,
lines of
it's
demarcation.
people that have sewers that are not in the first,
Right.
second, third, or sixth. Sorry about that.
It-
but
it's-
that's
It's,
what
I
it
mean, it's
is.
really too bad. I think you made the point. It's really too bad they're not called what they are,
yeah,
Yes,
right,
I know.
absolutely,
I-
like
I
a
don't
sewer
think we can-
district or the Rowayton.
right.
Yeah, we can't change
Right,
that.
and I mean, they're basically divided by stone walls that were built billions of years ago. I mean, that's.
I'm just wondering, let me give it some thought, and I'll talk to one of my colleagues, whether we could create a parenthetical next to the first taxing district, paren, whatever it is, second
Right.
taxing district, paren, whatever it is. I
What
wonder if
its
that-
main thing is, yes, because,
Do you see my point? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
so if we could at least do a parenthetical, we're not altering the special act. We're simply
we can't, we
qualifying.
have no, we can't alter. it.
No, I understand that. I'm the lawyer. I know that.
No, I mean, I'm for everybody else's
Yeah.
Yeah,
edification.
no,
because
no,
it's-
absolutely.
Yeah,
But I
That's
think
up to
we
you.
could, for clarity, which is one of your big points,
exactly. Yeah,
Patsy,
yeah.
if we can create a parenthetical or even a footnote
Yeah.
on the page where it's introduced, at least people will know that's what it is. Because I'm telling you, it's the hardest thing for me to
I
understand
know. I
as an
know.
outsider. Yeah,
But also, they don't, the taxing districts, other than potentially the sixth, don't levy taxes. They collect revenue and the revenue reduces their mill rates to some degree.
interesting.
They collect taxes because.
In
they're
other words, they pay
services?
less for water. If the first district and the second district own water departments, and they pay less water rates than any other
So-
users. And so it has such a practical impact on people's lives, which is
Mm.
why it is necessary to explain it to them. Because it is such a jumble,
Because then it's even different.
such a
They're not only
jumble.
different between districts, but they're different within the district.
Right.
Well, if you don't have a sewer, then, then you pay something different.
Yeah, less.
When you go out to sell bonds, and maybe Rick, you know the answer to this. They have a public offering statement. The public
Mhm.
offering statement usually has a lot of historical information about the municipality in it.
Right.
To your recollection, or do you have filed in your office, or it would be in the city clerk's office, some of those public offering statements to see if they've taken a stab at describing these districts? I'm just trying to find a place
don't-
where that
I-
might
I
be
could look and
memorialized.
see. I was also just thinking too, we have like the city directories from
The old
back
yellow ones, whatever,
1998,
yeah.
yeah. And I believe the front of those do have information spots in them, so I'll also check there also. Because I think some of those will have some description of them, because, each one probably has their own historical something that's brought up in those
Yeah.
publications.
So
So
let
all
me just go back to this water piece with the two districts that own the water sources and departments. So if they get revenue from they serve, some of New Canaan, definitely, I think some of Darien maybe also, that they have clients that use their water. But in the district, if you're in the district and you have a loss, the district suffers, the people suffer that loss. They enjoy the gain, but they suffer the loss. So there are consequences to living in certain districts. Privileges, and there's also, responsibilities.
Yeah, and that's always been troublesome because if you
Yeah.
move into here,
I don't know if that's.
you might not buy property in one district versus another if you knew the variances.
Well, the electric in the third district be what everybody would be running for now,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
You're-
So it's a major practical discussion that we have to
Yeah.
try to find a way to help explain it.
So if I heard you right, this all came about when East Norwalk, South Norwalk, and Norwalk came together to form one town?
1913.
1930.
They were, their own identity, and they voted to join and become the city of Norwalk.
Separate mayors.
Yeah,
That's each town had a separate mayor?
South Norwalk and Norwalk.
no, yes, the towns did. I don't know
Interesting.
about the taxing district, how
No.
that was. I mean, the fire district.
So let's just go back to that.
I'll put you in charge, Carl.
No,
We'll go
no,
the
no.
monarchy rather than Mr. Levin.
Okay, but I don't know. Is that clearer to anybody, or anybody have any other questions on that? Because that's important for us to help people in Norwalk understand their community.
I think it's hugely important. I really do.
Okay,
And I think the idea of putting it up front in the document, even if it's a big paragraph, I think it
Yeah.
really needs to be
and
defined.
then tell them where to go to find, and then the rest of it is at the end,
Right.
like we started, that we put the district things, the taxing districts at the end.
And I like historical provisions too. I think that's an awesome.
Yeah. The other thing I am doing, is I'm trying to stay ahead. I know you don't think we're making progress, but we actually
Well,
are.
we are making, but I am nervous, I'm anxious.
I'm nervous too. I get
Okay.
nervous. Wait till you see me in April and May. I'll be
Okay.
shaking. But just to give you a sense, I'm working on the mayor's section and the council section. I'm saying this for a reason. Why do I say this for? Oh, yes. Because there's a number of provisions in the council section that talk about the council role with the taxing districts. And I'm going to move all of those provisions out of the council section into the taxing district section, but it will specifically say historical provisions pertaining to the council powers with regard to the taxing districts. I think if you put those things in that place, it'll give people a better context of how things work. So I'm going to be shifting some of those things out of there into that section. The other thing I want to give you a preview of is I will be getting to you and this will be very important as we go through the town, the city council provisions, is I'm going to get you a copy of the Municipal Powers Act that lays out all the municipal powers that exist under charters. It's not the exclusive list because there's powers throughout Title VII, but this is the roadmap as to what you can do with a charter. And the reason I'm going to get it out to you is as we get into the council section. Right now, the council has a lot of powers that are laid out very specifically, wrong file, laid out. Oh, I don't have it printed out. It has a number of like 70 different functions that they're responsible for. I'm going to go through and compare them to the Municipal Powers Act. If it's in the Municipal Powers Act, it doesn't need to be in the charter because it's covered by state law. It's an express grant of authority. And therefore, if the council and the mayor want to adopt an ordinance dealing with that particular power, they can do it. They don't need it in the charter. The only thing you'd want to keep in the charter are those things that are unique that you wouldn't have but for the special act that gives it to you.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to give you a little preview on that. So, Madam Chair.
Okay, that's great. When, and would that be for our
Next
next
meeting,
meeting?
yeah.
Okay. Okay,
And if you'd like, all right, I'll defer to you, and I think I have a place on the agenda in a minute, so.
Okay.
Oh, wait,
for what?
I just want to talk about thoughts about the next meeting. I mean,
Oh,
we're
okay.
gonna
All right,
do,
but- Yeah, but then there are some other things. Well, first, I wanted to go back to what the district piece is that another confusion is that their commissioners are elected at the same time as our city elections. And so they sort of cross over, you know, and that makes it even more confusing. Correct? The commissioners,
Not all of them are in the same election each time.
they're not,
No.
but
They have staggered.
yeah, but they're with the city elections.
with-
They don't have their own elections. They are done concurrent with a city election.
are they on the ballot, in the
Yes.
voting machines?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yeah. That's another total confusion of it.
And the first, the second, the third,
Third and sixth,
no,
no, sixth.
no,
no,
the first, the third, and the sixth all are 2-year terms.
Oh. you're
But
going
the
to-
second district has staggering 2-year terms because they have a much larger commission, taxing commissioners.
That makes it even more confusing.
So there's always staggering in
Yeah.
each district.
But they're all at the same time. So it's perceived that it's all one entity when it's not, is my point. Okay. that I'm trying to
My
make,
recommendation is after this charter revision is done,
Is to move out of Norwalk.
somebody needs,
Not to
somebody
do another
needs,
one, I'm all set.
no, somebody needs to do a management analysis of the taxing districts to see what they do, how they do it, and whether or not, but whatever, but we're not doing that here. I can tell you.
We're
you know,
not going anywhere near
It's a
that.
huge,
No, no.
huge
Not even gonna look at
enterprise,
the
but
book.
it's not something any charter revision could do.
No.
Even if it was the only thing the council gave to a charter
They
revision
have their
commission,
own power.
it's,
We
well,
don't have power over them.
well, we do in the sense that they're special act and they're in our charter. So you can,
All
you
right,
can,
well, okay.
yeah, but you don't want to do that, but I'm just saying, if somebody someday has to figure it out, it's not gonna be this group, I don't think.
Okay.
So,
No,
but
we're
we
just
should
going
do
with
everything
the
we can to
language.
clarify it. I think
Okay.
I agree
So
with
then
you.
there are some other smaller things, Sheriff, and some other issues that we're talking about eliminating. We don't need them, whatever.
Would there
Is
need
that-
to be anything done other than just striking them from this charter to be effective?
I
guess,
don't know.
When
That's
those current people are
yeah.
done with their term?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you cannot eliminate an office that somebody is holding, so
Right.
it would
Right.
occur at the end of their term of
Exactly,
office.
exactly.
Constables,
The discussion
sheriff.
whether they need to be or should be, needs to be had. And that we just don't arbitrarily say we're eliminating them. We need to discuss it.
Yeah.
Is my point.
Mhm.
well, how do you want to do? Do you want to bring the sheriffs in, have them testify, or how do you
I
want to
don't
figure
know.
that out?
How many do we have?
One,
There's only one sheriff.
Yeah, there's one sheriff, right?
There's only one sheriff in this town.
There's a new sheriff in town, brother.
No, he's the same old one.
It's the same old one. Yep.
who is the sheriff? I don't
Uh,
remember.
Matt Dillon.
Oh, my God. Bobby. Oh, my God.
He's a marshal.
No, that's right.
Bobby's a marshal?
No, Bobby's.
No. Matt Dillon is a constable.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
And we
Okay.
can't I don't believe we can eliminate constables.
I don't know,
Why not?
but whatever there, there has been discussion that we needed to eliminate some of those positions. So we need to hone in on it and deal with it and get it over with. In this
Or
section.
if constables went away, who would take over their powers? and
No,
stuff?
constables are needed.
What-
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think you get rid of, can you?
Yes,
We
you
can't get
can.
rid of them.
Yes, you can,
Can?
but you can get rid of them as elected officials and make them appointed. You have that option under the statute. I
Right.
just went through this in Fairfield, but I will tell you, it turned out to be a big brouhaha.
And it would be a
And
big.
so you have to
brouhaha, yeah.
decide, you have to decide whether the brouhaha is worth it over that.
Yeah,
Do it
Yeah.
on somebody else's charter.
Yeah,
But you also have the Board of Selectmen, by the way, Madam Chair, is
Yeah,
another one
right.
of those.
right.
yeah, and what do they do? Even when I've asked people that ran for that position, what do you do if you get that job? They go, I don't know.
The selectman is, the only thing that I have ever seen a selectman does is verify the voters list in the register of voters.
Hmm.
It's the only thing I can find that they still do.
Mm.
The registrar's
Wow.
office do that anyway.
Yes. But that's why it should be.
That's what.
And
So
we
I
have
think
a
you have to
police
look at
department,
your,
so we
you
don't
have to
need a
look at the sheriff and you have to look at the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, definitely.
And is the sheriff somebody that you guys know who you'd want to
Yes.
invite in?
Yeah, yes.
Who's the sheriff?
What will the sheriff
Oh,
say?
Bobby.
Yeah, I think
No.
right now, we can look at those positions for the next time around, but what's there right now, I think it's gonna be a
Yeah.
little difficult.
So we make a list of these
Yeah.
things need to be dressed in the next charter.
Right.
Then that would be probably
Mhm,
one of,
Absolutely.
okay. Okay. What else do you have for us, Steve?
So let me run through where I think we are.
Okay,
And getting ready for the 15th of February. We're gonna have that panel on terms of office, 2-year, 4-year term of office, a three-member panel. That could take 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little shorter. So it's gonna be a chunk of our meeting. I will hopefully distribute an update on Article 10, the budget finance sections. The CFO is giving his attention to it after today. He had a deadline today. I've already received comments from the mayor's office and from some of the council leadership that have been looking at it. I will do some notes and updates on the chapters that the issues within the chapters we talked about tonight, chapters 1 through 3, 6, and 9. Remember, the Board of Education is number 9. And so you
Yeah.
need to think about what we want to do with them. At one point, we talked about bringing them in. And so, that,
maybe at the meeting after the next one, 2 meetings out.
the
We
1st
need
of
to,
March.
yeah, we need to look at their schedule too, whether they're in the middle of their budget hearings, because that would not be a good time.
Right.
And I don't know what that is, but
And then I will sit down with Patsy with the chair and lay out, similar to what we did tonight, some of the issues that will be in chapters 4 and 5, the council and the mayor. One of them we did tackle tonight a little bit was the city clerk, which is in the mayor's section. But I will have those provisions hopefully honed down and drafted so that maybe she can make a determination of what some of the issues we should earmark in those sections for kind of a preliminary discussion. And so that's where we are. So with those, in 2 weeks, you should have the next 2 chapters. So we're going to have a lot of chapters covered. I'm not saying we're going to go over them
Yeah.
line by line, but I'm going to keep getting these things out to you. And as you comment and give me direction, I'm going to update the documents so that we can move them toward a place where sometime in early April, we'll be ready to start going through chapter by chapter. My hope is that sometime in March, I will be done with the preliminary draft. Meaning the big section on departments and the section on boards and commissions. Those are the only 2 things I haven't touched yet, because I'm now in the mayor and the council, but those are the last 2 I will need to deal with. So in terms of the breadth of the document, I'm getting drafting done on a lot of stuff so that it keeps moving. So I want to give you some comfort level that we are moving. I'm ferociously tackling it because I've got 3 charters and I'm trying to get as much of the heavy drafting done. This is my biggest drafting project. Everything else is piecemeal. This is a total redo.
yeah,
And so I'm working very hard on getting that stuff done. So my hope is by the end of March, we'll be ready to look at those 2 big chapters and start bringing this thing home in April and early May.
okay, so would it be helpful for you to have any of the commissioners send things to you, or do you want to wait and discuss it all?
It's up to them
here?
if Madam Chair, whatever you think, whatever you think is helpful and useful, that would be fine. If people, look, I want to encourage everybody to read what I send you. And our good friend, the commissioner who is in Davos right now,
Yeah,
I really beg her to read it for simplicity and for plain language. She's been a big advocate of that. And I came across a few things today in the rough drafts that need to be fixed. I just want to make sure that this document is as clean and clear as can be. So if all of you are reading this, we don't need, unless it's a substantive issue, but if it's something about readability and clarity, and you're reading it with the permission of the chair, I would encourage you to send me your markups. I'm sending you Word documents because I trust all of you to be good conscientious commissioners who will mark it up and if they think it's useful. So
I know we haven't been doing that, and I'm trying to.
no, it's a
get
great
us,
idea,
Yeah, more
Patsy.
into it, yeah.
Wonderful idea, and that
Okay.
would help facilitate the process for
Yeah.
me. So if you have those things, you all don't have to do everything. Or you might, one of the things you might think about, Madam Chair, is maybe ask members of the commission, instead of having everybody do chapter 1, break it down. Say maybe 2 of you should look at chapter 1, 2 of you should look at chapter 2, whatever it may be. If we're doing it for readability, I would leave it up to you to maybe assign it and then ask people to get me their markups. That might be the cleanest way to do it.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Good.
Looking
Thank
at
you.
pieces out there, how do you guys feel? Would you like to work that way?
Mhm.
Carl and Benita,
Yeah, sure.
okay, yeah, okay, and then the simple wordsmithing, is there an easier way to get that done? How can we
What do you
make
mean?
that simpler? Well, just, I guess it's to the point that you were just making, but,
That's what I was
Yeah,
hoping you
okay.
guys would help
Okay,
me with. I mean, I'm
okay.
gonna go through it
I
myself.
wanted to just make that clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as long as
Every
your
time-
documents are unlocked and we can edit.
I don't lock them. So when I send Word doc, and I don't know what when they send them from Jordan, I'll talk to Jordan, make sure he
Oh,
sends them to you.
Jordan, he's right here.
Oh, hi, Jordan. Jordan.
You're locked?
Are they
Make sure that,
locked?
No, they're not locked.
yeah, so,
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't saying they were. I'm just
Oh.
reminding as long as they're not
Okay.
locked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'll just to clarify, sometimes if I get them, it'll just ask you to click a button to say enable editing or anything like that, but that should typically, anybody should be able to allow to do that.
Okay.
Sure.
Excuse me, Jordan, you said anybody should be able to do that?
Yes, Benita said that.
Yeah, so when I send the Word document that I get from Steve, there's usually a button that pops up in my Microsoft Word version that says enable editing, but it usually mine pops up the second I open up Microsoft Word. I don't know if anybody else has had that
Yeah,
experience when I
it's
send it.
usually up on the top and the
Yeah.
side.
It's usually a blue button that pops up at the top when you.
Mine is yellow.
Okay.
Mine's
Strike it from
course
the
it
record
is.
then.
yellow.
Yours is yellow too. Yeah. Okay, all right. Anything else? Okay, so you're gonna sort of take our feelings and put them down, and then when we see them in paper, we can rediscuss them and make decisions.
okay,
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
thank you. Good night.
Ready
Good
to
night.
move For adjournment,
So moved.
So move.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See all the hands up, except Carl. He's not voting.
He's on the beach.
He's abstaining.
I'm island time.
Just put your hand up, Carl. Good going. Okay. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.